What's up, my friend? Abby here, and welcome back to Writer's Life Wednesdays. Get ready, because this is the final video in the series, How to Outline a Riveting Novel Using the 3-Act Story Structure. In previous weeks, we've already talked about how to outline a brilliant, strong opening to your novel and how to outline a gripping, addictive middle act of your novel. And if you haven't seen those videos already, check them out. You kind of have to lay the foundation, right? You have to outline a good beginning and a good middle, or else you can't get people to your awesome, riveting, gripping climax, right? Right. So, links to those videos in the description box below. If you've already seen them and taken notes, good on you. Let's get going with this video. So in today's video, we're gonna tackle the biggest and most intimidating part of a story, the grand finale. Basically, how to craft an emotional roller coaster of a crescendo that highlights your character's inner battle and makes readers super savage to anyone who dares to interrupt them while reading this part of your book. Okay, so let's pick up right where we left off at the end of Act 2. Your protagonist has been through one hell of a ride already, and it's only gonna get worse from here. But that's okay, because that's what's gonna bring their character development full circle. Throughout this series, we've been talking about how this outlining method isn't just about figuring out what happens, it's about figuring out why it matters and how it transforms the characters. And where is the most of this transformation gonna take place? Act 3. Because up until now, your protagonist has been reacting to every challenge based on their fear and misbelief about the world. They're still stuck in their old beliefs, their hard-won truths. It's gonna take something major to make them come to their senses and realize that they were wrong this whole time. Something major like a disaster, but we'll get to that in a minute. Before the disaster strikes, there's actually another plot point that you don't see in every 3-act story structure. That's because it's totally optional, but totally awesome. I like to call it supposed victory. Pretty self-explanatory. Basically, your protagonist feels confident that they will be victorious. They have a plan, and maybe they feel like everything is gonna work out for them. They feel like they're on the cusp of happiness. They're gonna finally be happy! Finally. But little do they know, disaster is on the way. I love this so much because, of course, the reader knows that this is too good to be true. And that, again, creates that sense of rising dread. Not only do we feel for the protagonist's desire to be happy, but we also feel the fear of the opposition that's gonna step in and destroy them in a minute. So ask yourself, why does my protagonist think they'll be victorious? What's happening that makes them feel like they're so close to achieving their goals and finding happiness at last? Like I said before, this is totally optional, but it makes your disaster so much more heartbreaking if you can sneak in a little supposed victory before it. More heartbreaking is always a good thing. You know you want to crush your reader's soul. Don't pretend to be nice. You're not. Next story beat. Disaster. Again, pretty self-explanatory. Something or everything goes wrong. Protagonists never saw it coming, and it's everything they're terrified of. I'm actually gonna make a whole video on how to crush and destroy and break your characters, and if you're watching this in the future, the link to that video will be right here. But basically, a surefire way to bring your protagonist to their knees is by rooting the disaster into their fear and misbelief. This is where a lot of writers go wrong. They think up some epic, crazy disaster to happen to their protagonist, and they think it's good because they think this would be a disaster for anyone to deal with, right? This would be horrible for anybody to deal with, right? No. When you start saying things like, it would be yada 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 for anyone, you know you've lost touch with the internal conflict. Sorry to be so annoying about this internal conflict thing. No, I'm not. But seriously, this is so important. Yes, disaster is disastrous for anyone, but be brutally honest with yourself and ask yourself, why does it matter specifically to my protagonist? What does it mean for them? How does it force them into the ring with their greatest fear? See, you've been developing this character so strongly through this whole story. You've set them up for disaster because of all the bad decisions that they made again and again based on their fear and misbelief. But when disaster strikes, it has to have a special meaning for your protagonist. Otherwise, it's just a thing that happens to fill in the blank character because the reader is now imagining themselves in that situation. And that's not a bad thing, of course, but you don't want the character to feel like the reader or like anybody. You want the reader to feel like they are the character. Sounds like a tall order, but it's really so much easier than it looks. Answer that question. What does this disaster specifically mean for my protagonist? How does it force them to realize that they're the one to blame for this whole crisis? How does it completely disarm them and make them face off with their greatest fear and misbelief? See what you come up with. Okay, now after the disaster comes the dark moment. You know how I said it was going to take a major low moment for your protagonist to come to her senses? Well, here it is. The moment when your protagonist is utterly and completely confused, broken, disappointed, and lost and hopeless. In other words, this is the fun part. It's always darkest before the dawn, right? And your protagonist needs a rock bottom moment in order to have an aha moment. And that's what makes the revelation so satisfying. And this goes back to the character arcs that we were talking about. I actually just wrote a post for my blog that's all about character arcs, and it goes hand in hand with this whole series. So if you want to check that out, it would be a great companion to this video series. Check it out. The link is in the description box below. And basically this post included this cool little line chart that I made of the powerful character arc. I'll show it here real quick. As you can see, it follows the 3-act story structure like we've been talking about, and the lowest point on the chart is your protagonist's dark moment. They'll never be more lost and confused and broken than they are right now. But you know what that means. The only way to go is up. Which brings us to the next story beat, the aha moment. This is the best part. Pretty much what your entire story has been leading up to. Seriously, the whole story is just like the packaging for the message of the aha moment. And what is the aha moment? Short answer, protagonist must overcome their false beliefs in order to continue to the climax, thus developing as a character. Long answer, it's the biggest pivotal moment of your story. After your protagonist has been brought to their knees by the disaster, they have a revelation, an aha moment. They can suddenly see how their fear and misbelief has led them to make the wrong decisions about everything. They realize how wrong they were, but more importantly, they realize that they're gonna have to make the right decisions now in order to achieve their goal, true happiness. So how is your protagonist going to overcome their fear and continue to the climax, thus developing as a character? What lesson are they going to learn and simultaneously teach the audience? Only after your protagonist has this aha moment can they continue to the climax. Without this revelation, they don't have the courage to face their biggest challenge of all. But with this revelation, the protagonist can overcome her fear, crush her misbelief, and show the reader how much she's changed and developed since the beginning of the story. You want your readers to think your story is satisfying? This is it. This is it, my friend. And now the big moment, aka the climactic confrontation. Protagonist faces their biggest challenge of all. By this point, we're well into the final act of your story, but something important obviously hasn't happened yet. It needs to happen. The climax. This is the moment everyone has been waiting for, when your protagonist is gonna face their biggest challenge yet. It's a true test of their character and proof that they have transformed as a result of their journey. Man, that is so satisfying to say. So your protagonist has already won the internal battle, that was in their aha moment, and now it's time for them to face the external battle, which of course will throw them into the ring with their greatest fears. And again, this works for any type of story, whether your protagonist is about to go into a literal battle with an army of fire-breathing dragons, or they're going to go tell their crush that they're in love with them. Every good climactic confrontation is emotional above all else. So ask yourself, how does my protagonist prove their transformation by crushing their misbelief and facing their fear with courage? If you know the answer to that question, congratulations, you're going to write a freaking awesome climax that's gonna bring your protagonist's character development full circle and leave every single reader cheering for them. And last but not least, the final story beat, victory and resolution and tying up loose ends and all that goodness. This doesn't necessarily mean that the protagonist wins the external battle or that things turned out exactly as they hoped, but the protagonist does experience a personal victory because they overcame their fear, crushed their misbelief, and made it out alive. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe they died, but I don't know about you, but I like happy endings. But it's up to you. The ending doesn't necessarily have to be happy, but the protagonist does have to come to the realization that their misbelief has been just that, dead wrong. The protagonist does have to change as a result of their journey. That's what makes a powerful character arc. If your reader doesn't know how the protagonist has transformed as a result of her journey, You need to rewrite your book until they do. At the end of the story, your reader should feel contented with the message of the book because the character has changed for the better, even if she wasn't able to fix everything and make everything turn out right in the end. Sometimes it's just too late to make things right, and that can be a poignant message in and of itself, something that can evoke thought in your reader, maybe even change their lives. So, last question to ask yourself, make it a good answer. How has my protagonist changed as a result of her journey? Boom! The end! I've been waiting all month to say that. That is it, your riveting novel outline, your roadmap to a memorable story that will not only satisfy your readers, but impact them with this powerful message that you went out on a quest to proclaim. If you want to steal my printable template for the 3-act story structure, this whole structure template thing, I have a PDF in the description box below. Click the link, it'll open the PDF. You can print it off and just use it over and over again. I literally use this template all the time. I just have like a whole bunch of them, and I grab one whenever I have a new story idea that I just want to outline, structure real quick. It's very fill in the blank, very simple, and it almost does the work for you. So cool. So if you want in on that, the link is in the description right below this video. Okay, my friend, you should feel so proud of yourself for doing this thing, for watching these videos and taking notes and outlining your freaking awesome novel. I guarantee you that because you put in the work now, you will thank yourself later, and your readers will thank you too. Outlining stories like this has seriously changed my life, and I hope it has done the same for you. I mean, what the heck? By this point, you should have an awesome outline. Now all you have to do is just go write the novel. Shouldn't be too hard, right?